All right, everyone, it's Wednesday morning. This is the morning briefing from the Celtic Way. We're we're in the international break now, guys. We're nearly, the football hasn't even started yet, and it feels like we've been in it for a while. But listen, we spoke about that yesterday, so we should have things to talk about with Tony and Ryan. Tony, hello.
How are you? You well? You good?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Don't often get asked that, so it's a weird one to answer. But I can't complain. Not a great deal happening. Ryan.
Yeah, nothing to complain about from this side either. Things are looking good. International break, so enjoying the wee bit of downtime because it's going to be a long old season when Celtic return. I know there's a couple other international breaks dotted about the year, but it's going to be pretty much full throttle once they return a week on Saturday against Hearts. Just enjoying this downtime and might even tune into a couple of the international games to see how some of the new players get on, because you can look at Austin Trusty and Arne Engels because they've both been called up for their respective nations. So maybe a wee bit of scouting to be done, but enjoying the Celtic free moments at the moment because it's going to be a long season.
Are we expecting Arne to feature for Belgium? Because you'd think he'd be very much in the fringes given the options they've got in midfield.
I think he might get bloodied in just to see how he takes to it. You know, some managers maybe like to bring them into the international setup and maybe not give them action, but just integrate them into it for the next time. But I'd like to think, there's a lot of hype on him now, isn't there? He's £11 million. He's Celtic's biggest ever signing, so I think you might want to give him a wee taster, just like you got a wee taster of it on Sunday against Rangers. So I'm hoping, because you'd like to see him compete and see what he can bring to the table in that exalted company, as you say, Hamish. And the great thing is he's only going to become a better player, isn't he? Mixing in those circles. And that's a win-win for Celtic.
It is, definitely. Morning, everyone. Listen, let us know if there's stuff you want us to chat about. Because you may have got the vibe that there's not a whole deal happening during the international break. Obviously, we won't struggle. But if there's any topics, any thoughts you got for the weekend, fire them in the comments and I will bring them up on screen. What did we make of Engels in his debut? He didn't get too much of the ball, but I thought there was a couple of wee moments where he kind of got it and moved it on quite quickly and looked quite neat.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The speed of play looked really good from Arne Engels. It reminded me of European players that Celtic come up against in the Champions League. So having that sort of weapon and amongst your own ranks is going to be so beneficial for the European competition, starting with Slovan Bratislava. We were talking about that game in a bit more detail yesterday, but I think that's a statement game, and I think that could be the game where Arne Engels really does come to the fore and announce himself on the European stage. It's all well and good playing in the Bundesliga. Every second, third week, you're coming up against a good team, the likes of Leverkusen, Munich, Leipzig, Dortmund, etc. Will be coming up against Dortmund and Leipzig, respectively. But if he can do that for Celtic, then he'll automatically put himself in the shop window. I've got no doubts that Celtic, like with some players, Celtic isn't the end destination for Arne Engels, but it helps both sides that they both do well for each other. If the club treats Arne Engels well and he treats them well by putting in good performances in the Champions League, then I think everybody would be happy. But I'm looking forward to seeing him. I thought that half an hour cameo from him was pretty good. I said on Monday that I liked the fact that he was not shy on bringing a player down by literally ripping his top off.
Did he get a booking?
That's what I want. Yes, he did. It was a professional foul. There was actually a bit of, where I was sitting in the stands, there was actually a bit of blue shirt on the pitch for the rest of the game, and that's
it
where
was. I thought it was Diamande. I'm pretty sure it was Diamande because it's certainly Diamande. You wouldn't have seen this on TV, but for the last 10 or 15 minutes of the game, he was going about with his shirt hanging there. So unless there was two players going about like that, that's not bad in your debut. Literally ripping the shirt of our greatest rivals.
It was the lasting picture for me of the game because I could just see it in my head. I've never seen a shirt being ripped like that actually from the man onto the ground. The only time that I've seen something near that was actually Scott Arfield against Olivier and Cham, you might remember 3, 4, 5 years ago. he's actually pulling him back like some sort of Tom and Jerry cartoon because he can't stop Ncham from moving. It was just that was an all-round great performance from Ncham that day. Hoping to see similar from Engels starting in December as well, because we did see a cameo against Rangers from Engels, but I would fully be expecting him to start that game at Ibrox in the reverse fixture at the end of the year.
I tell you what, he should have got. He should have got a penalty. He did not get clattered. Engels. And it wasn't even looked at. I think there was 2 incidents. Somebody said there was a handball originally. They never even showed the replay. And then Engels was absolutely cleaned out in the next phase when he was going for the ball. And it was a definite
I thought that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what John Beaton's not seen there. But, again, nitpicking, but them rules are them rules. I thought it looked very comfortable and accomplished on the ball. You can tell when somebody just their first touch and they've got a bit of class about them. And I thought, didn't do anything spectacular, but you just looked at him and thought, yeah, you can play. And I like the look of Luke McCowan. He's loving it. He's just living his best life. Get wired in. His old man was loving it too. And a wee spoiler coming up. I thought what Callum McGregor said to him was utterly outstanding.
Do you want to tell people that just in case they haven't seen it?
Well, he sort of told the great takeaway from it was he said to him, "I'll be there with you." I just thought those words were absolutely terrific. Wonderful leadership that was from McGregor to a young boy and putting his mind at ease. This is exactly what he said to him. Go and play. You've got massive quality. Just go and run about. I'll be with you. So let's just go. I mean, that's, in a game like that, to assure a young man, that, don't worry, I'm here. And if you look up and you see me, you'll be comforted and reassured. But I just thought that was an utterly outstanding piece of, leadership from Callum McGregor and being a true captain. And I will be writing something about it. But I just think, and the young guy, you saw him, he came out to an empty Celtic Park. His first thought was, Jesus, And then he played in front of a full Celtic Park for the 15-minute cameo and came off and said he had the best time and he's living his best life. And I think out of all the signings that we made in the transfer window, I think Luke McCowan will surprise us the most, because I think we will see something from that young man, and the very fact that he's now reaching his peak years. And Ryan touched upon it there. Brendan Rodgers said there's players that Celtic won't be their end destination, and there's players that Celtic will be their end destination. This is this young boy's end destination. And I think he will give you 4 years, 5 years, whatever contract he's signed, of the best football of his career. And if you've been watching him at Dundee in the past year, this boy can play and he can score goals, he can create goals, and he'll be a valuable asset to this football club. And I think alongside the likes of Engels, you are getting excited because there's real strength and depth there. And you saw the way Bernardo played as well. I like to McGregor just being Callum McGregor. Real strength and depth in that area, and real competition for places, and not forgetting that although he's kind of on the periphery at the minute, Odin Thiago Holm, who can also play. He's a good footballer. So I'm excited about that, but I just thought I would bring that up because I thought that was an outstanding thing to say. I'm going to say a young guy, he's 26, but I just thought it was very reassuring and very calming. I know Ryan's laughing there. He's 26, So
my last day's been 26. I don't feel so young anymore. Second last day. I'm getting mixed up with the days. That was an absolute clanger for myself. I should know that. But just on the Luke McCowan point, there was something that I was going to say. It was Odin Thiago Holm. I think that shows you the strength and depth that Celtic have got at the moment. I think Odin Thiago Holm gets in every other team in the country, bar Celtic, or most teams. Because he's a talented young player. He can't even get on Celtic's bench at the moment. That's how strong Celtic are in the midfield. I can't remember the midfield being as deep and as strong as what it is just now. I know Matt O'Reilly's away and he was a great asset to the club goals and assists. I just think there's so much upside with Arne Engels, Bernardo. Bernardo, that was a statement on Sunday from him. because a lot of people have been talking about Arne Engels coming into this game. Was he going to instantly start? Was he going to immediately take the place of one of the players? Likely Bernardo, because he'd started that last game against St Mirren, so it was a position that was potentially up for grabs despite a good performance in Paisley. Nobody was really talking about him at full time. Everybody was talking about how good Bernardo was for 60 minutes. And there's that compilation video that's been going about a couple of days ago. I think it was Stuart who has an article on the site today about Daizen Maeda, coincidentally, but he put out one of Bernardo's overall work in the game and his interceptions, his passing. He's all action. He's so, as Tony says, he can play football, but he's also a grafter as well. He's at 50-50 between the two. I think he's going to suit Celtic perfectly for the next few years. He's going to be an asset in Europe and domestically as well. I just expect him to rise to all occasions that is expected of him now.
Yeah, the point you make about the midfield's interesting because we're actually down on numbers from where we were at the start of the window. We've lost a lot of midfielders: Lawal, Iwata, O'Reilly, Kelly, Kwon. But you would look at the midfield now and you look at, obviously, I think you've got a main four, right? Main four for me anyway, looking at it. McGregor, Engels, Hatate, Bernardo. And then you get someone like Luke McCowan, who I think I agree with you, Tony. I think he might surprise us, and I'm quite excited about him, especially after seeing him on Sunday. But, he's kind of more unproven, I'd say, than the likes of Engels and Bernardo. But not a bad player to have as your fifth option if you're listing them down. And then you've got Odin Holm, who I must admit I'm really not sure about. If I'm honest, I'm not sure Brendan Rodgers is sure about him. But he's likely to play more of a part than someone like Lawal or Kwon or Kelly did last season. So you've almost kind of trimmed the midfield in terms of numbers, but you'd look at all of them as hopefully all of them being able to come in and impact games at some stage. And that kind of goes for the squad as well. With the majority of players in the squad now, you would have faith in them coming in. There's still a few that I've got question marks about. Yang, Palma, Naropsky. I'll be honest, I've got question marks about those guys. But generally, compared to where the squad was before the window, you feel a bit more secure that we've got better options there.
Hamish, those five midfielders, you're permanently 3 from 5. But the other two are, you are trusting them to do a job if they're picked to impact football matches. That's a strong 5. That's a great hand to play at any given time in any given game.
6 in total, Tony.
Okay, 6 then. But the 5 that you named, you said McGregor, Hatate, Bernardo, Engels, McCowan,
and
Holm.
Yeah, you've got Holm as well.
Right, okay. So permanently 3 from 6. And the 3 that miss out are still capable of coming on and really, driving a game or impacting the game. That's where the manager wanted it. That's the quality that we've been craving. That's the quality that you can hopefully take into the Champions League and say, right, let's make strides here. And I'm very happy with that particular part of the field. And I know we've lost the likes of Matt O'Reilly, but you look at what we did do. We trimmed off the excess fat, call it what you like, the kind of bloatedness of the squad, and got rid of the players that you thought were bit part players. And you've now not so much replaced them, you've now got guys in who are going to play. Those 6 rotating forward are going to play games, aren't they? They're going to be asked to play games because it's as Ryan said there, you're going hell for leather now after this international break. And, there are a lot of games both domestically and in Europe, and in that section leading up to Christmas, and so you're going to need all those players. So I'm delighted with that, and also I think they're all on point. Whenever they do come into that team, they know what's required. I mean, Bernardo hit a ridiculously high bar on Sunday. Engels came in and looked as comfortable as he's ever been, and Luke McCowan was just like, I'm going to show you. This is my stage. I've got here eventually. And love that, just love that, and I love that the manager has instilled that in all of the players. But that particular area of the park, I'm excited about moving forward.
I think we're going to see I've got, I think, 3, 5, 10, 12, 18, 25 players in front of me in this screen in terms of what I would call first team kind of senior players, and I think we're going to see the majority of them over the next chunk of matches. Brendan Rodgers said that. I remember him saying that at the end of last season, I want a stronger squad next year because I wasn't able to rotate things as much as I wanted last season, and he reckons that was maybe one of the reasons why we kind of went into that slump in the middle of last season. So I think when we come back from this break, up until this point it's been very steady, one game a week, minimal changes each week, maybe one, maybe two changes from the team the previous week. I think when we go into this next run of however many matches, domestic games, European games coming in, I think you're going to see Brendan Rodgers making 3, 4, possibly 5 changes most matches. I think, for example, you would see, if Kyogo's playing midweek, you would see Ida come in for the weekend, or vice versa. You might see James Forrest coming in instead of Kuhn for maybe the domestic matches. I think, fullbacks, Anthony Ralston, I think will start games. Alex Valle, I think will start games. And obviously in that midfield area, you're going to have, Bernardo, McCowan, Engels, probably Hatate as well, maybe. I think McGregor will probably be the one constant in there. But even then, you'd maybe be looking for him to drop out, although that's less of an issue now that he's not playing international football. So I think we've got options there, and I think Brendan Rodgers, I honestly think if I made one prediction for the next run of games, I think Brendan Rodgers is going to be rotating the team from match to match. I'm not talking about making 11 changes, but as I say, I think 3, maybe 4 changes from the European match to the midweek match to the weekend match. I think you'll see that.
See, you're rotating, but it's not getting weaker because the players in and around the team are hungry. Those players that are on the bench for said match will be hungry on that bench, and those players on the bench as well will be looking to make an impact in that same game, and vice versa, because the players that are on the bench are just as important as the ones that are starting. They've got to come off. They've got to come on the pitch for half an hour, and maybe they're chasing a game, they're chasing a draw, they're chasing a win, whether that's domestically or on the European front. They've got to go and impact that game and show that they deserve that start at the weekend, from midweek to weekend. It's going to be a busy old time. I do agree with you completely. I think there's going to be some amount of changes game on game, but as long as that's normalised and the squad depth is there, then it shouldn't have too much of an issue. If they're all playing the same way, they know the system, then there shouldn't be that much problems between changing the teams. That midfield that you're talking about, that's strength and depth now. The fact that Oden Thiago Holm can't even get on the bench is proof of that. Paulo Bernardo, he's the first name on the team sheet for me, or one of them in Europe, just for his pressing off the ball. I think he's massive for Celtic.
He was even last season.
Madrid. I know.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be so important that his pressing off the ball is utilised, especially in away games. He is a machine for the 60 minutes in which he can do it. He did tire, that's why he came off against Rangers. But if you can do that for 60 minutes, and then somebody like Hatate or Engels, although to be fair, I think Engels will be starting most European games. Why wouldn't you start your £11 million signing in the Champions League? That wouldn't make sense. So even having the likes of Hatate maybe to come on with half an hour to go, if you're chasing a victory, having someone that can unlock doors and unlock defences with his passing and his shooting, that's a good avenue to go down as well. So there's pressure and there's squad depth all over the pitch. I just think having those defenders as well, the likes of Baye and Austin Trusty, they're going to be so important because they're in positions that have really been uncontested. So I think you'll then see the benefits of having players now in those positions, because Scales can take a game out, or Greg Taylor can be swapped out for Baye. Having those players in will only breed more confidence in the players that have already got that so-called yellow jersey. I think you've seen that at the weekend. I've got to be honest. I think those two players, Scales and Taylor, responded this weekend or last weekend because they knew that there was players in their position that were breathing down their necks, essentially.
And based on Sunday's big game performances, see if you're talking midfield, Hatate would be the one to drop out.
Yep.
Because I thought Hatate was the weakest of the midfielders on Sunday.
Slack
He
at
was
times,
slack.
wasn't he?
He was off it, wasn't he? So if you're bringing somebody like Enkels in, you ain't dropping Bernardo. Hatate would have been the one. And it's no controversial. Yeah. It's what your eyes are telling you. It's what you're seeing. And you say to yourself, okay, and you never ever envisaged a midfield without Hatate, but as Ryan says, the manager's going to go horses for courses without a doubt for games and in European games. So you might see Hatate sit on the bench for some games because, again, I think on Sunday he was slack at times, wasn't he? Gave the ball away a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but gave it away. And going back, he was reverting to that type that the manager had already called out and said to him, gives the ball away too much. Seemed to have it on point at the start of the season and during pre-season. But on Sunday, and better teams, i.e. European level teams, they will punish you when you do things like that. They will punish Celtic for giving away cheap possession, and the manager's well aware of that. He's all over it. So I think that's why he introduced the likes of Enkles and McCowan and just said, right, this is what it's like to play in a big game, but get used to it because we're playing loads of big games coming up in this competition. You will feature at some point. So I think no midfielder, with the exception of McGregor, is guaranteed to start guaranteed to start any matches in the Champions League. But on form and on what you saw the first major test of the season against Rangers, Bernardo's certainly in there, isn't he? You liked Bernardo last season in the Champions League. So I think there's one place up for grabs, and it's Hatate's. And it's up to Enkles and McCowan to sort of say to the manager, I'm your man.
I just wonder if Rodgers... Engels and Bernardo and obviously McGregor is an option for Rodgers, because the reason I say that, I looked at it on Sunday. And listen, I don't think Hatate was horrendous or anything. I thought, generally he was still in the lead up to the disallowed goal. It was his really neat pass into to McGregor, wasn't it? But I do agree with you, Tony. There was moments when he was slack, and I was thinking, when he was struggling in that second half, I would have brought Hatate off for Engels and had Bernardo keep playing. Rodgers didn't do that for whatever reason. It might be a fitness issue with Bernardo. Maybe he's not ready to play 90 yet. But I wonder if there's enough, variation in that midfield. If it's Engels and Bernardo next to each other, we'll need to wait and see. I just wonder if you need Hatate in there for whatever reason. But it's one to keep an eye on. A few people are mentioning Celtic women are actually playing at the moment in a UEFA Champions League, Women's Champions League qualifier. Not good news, guys. We're 1-0 down to, I think it's Cups, you pronounce it, or KUPS, Finnish team. A game that we were expected to win as well. So just 25 minutes gone, 1-0 down. We'll keep an eye on that while we're on. I want to go through a few comments, guys. Feel free to chip in to any of these. Christopher saying this international fortnight should be used wisely by the Celtic board and recruit ahead of recruitment, so we don't have to go through another transfer window that we have just been through. I think the window ended up well, but I'm not going to sugarcoat the first part of it. It took far too long, and we shouldn't have been in the rush we were at the end. So, but it sounds like from what Brendan Rodgers was saying near the end of the window, that this is something the club are going to look at, the recruitment department, and they really need to.
He made that abundantly clear that the recruitment team wasn't working, which was a far cry from what he was saying when he joined the club. And I get that he's had to work under it, so he would have a different opinion of it now rather than when he just came through the door and was maybe showing all the good bits about it. There's your selling point. There's this recruitment team. Now that he's actually got to grips with it and worked with it for a year or so, he realises that there needs to be some changes in that department. I just hope that, I think that should have been sorted out in the summer. It should have been sorted out before the summer happened. So I'm a little bit perplexed at what they were doing between February to June, because that area could have been a time to recruit ahead of recruitment, and bring in scouts. I know they brought in Mark Cooper, although there was no players that joined from South America. So is his expertise being used somewhere different? Is he looking at a different area for certain players?
Could be looking at MLS, action, possibly.
That could be it. Yeah, that actually does make sense. The fact that Austin Trusty.
So we're linked with the other guys. Well, Gazdag, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah,
and Boggets as well. Yeah,
Boggets as well. So yeah, that does actually check out. But it's more South America that he was. But then again, they'll play in the Copa Libertadores, don't they? They all play in that same competition.
good.
Some of the MLS
Copa
teams.
Libertadores, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same sort of area. I know it's two different continents. You get North and South America. You're dragging me into a geography. I was never good at geography. Capital cities, that's probably my limit. Yeah. I think the recruitment team just needs a complete overhaul, and they need to work around Brendan Rodgers. And as much as I don't want Rodgers to have full control of recruitment, I think Celtic have got something really, really good with the manager at the moment, and I want Celtic to keep him happy so he stays as long as possible. So let's cater to him a little bit. Maybe not give him full control, but allow him a big say in transfers whilst bringing in somebody that will deal with the recruitment. If you've got all of these same positions and all of these positions being filled, but also filled properly, then it only breeds well for the future. So, that's basically what I'm wanting. I'm wanting a better recruitment team because for 80% of that transfer window, it was a bit shambolic.
Yeah. What about Brendan Rodgers, Tony? Because Hughes commented in saying, I hope there are no detractors of Brendan Rodgers left anywhere. We have a top-level manager that we are lucky to have, and I hope everyone is on board with that. Now, I think every Celtic fan probably is on board with Brendan Rodgers now, and that certainly wasn't the case when he first came back.
If they're not, they should be. Let's put it this way. It was through Brendan Rodgers that he guided Celtic to Scottish Premiership and Scottish Cup double last season, and the way he skillfully manipulated the media at times as well, and then he's banged on about getting quality in. Yet the transfer window wasn't great, but it ended great, and he got his wish, and the team are pressed on. And any doubters, then fine. I've always said on this, I don't speak for the majority of Celtic fans. I speak for myself as a Celtic fan, and I welcomed him back with open arms from the moment he came back. I've mentioned it on this platform many times. I've written many articles about the fact that I right away said he was an elite level manager. People can disagree with that statement if they want. It's my feeling about him, and I've explained many times why. And if you're not on board with Brendan Rodgers as a Celtic supporter, then that's you and your conscience that have to decide why you feel that way about him. I think Brendan Rodgers wants what we all want. He wants results on and off the park, but he wants results at the level that we all crave Celtic to be a success at. And I think this season is the one where it remains an unticked box in Brendan Rodgers' Celtic managerial career, and it remains an unticked box for a lot of people who've watched Celtic for the past couple of decades and have failed to see them make those inroads and make progress in Europe. And I think this is the season where the board have said, okay, if you genuinely believe you can take Celtic to that next level and the next step, there you go. There's what you asked for. Go and do it. And I think Brendan, as I've said many times, he wants to restore Celtic's kind of battered prestige and honour and pride at that level of elite club competition. And I think the three of us sitting here and many thousands and millions around the world, that's exactly what we crave. And we're excited now about this team because we see something. We see green shoots growing, and we think this could be the season that this could finally happen. So I guess until he cracks that coconut shell, people will still throw it at him, won't they? They'll be quick to hurl that and beat him with that stick. So, but I'm hoping it's this season.
Listen, that's for me. That's the thing that's stopping Brendan Rodgers from being spoken about, possibly as our best manager of the 21st century. Obviously, Martin O'Neill at the moment is the undoubted leader in that regard, given what he achieved in Europe. But when you look at the domestic success Brendan Rodgers has had, and and the record against Rangers and all of those things, and I know Rangers aren't as strong now as they were back then. The argument would be Celtic aren't as strong either as we were at the early 21st century. But I think if Brendan Rodgers was to achieve something big in Europe, he could then be spoken about on the same level as Martin O'Neill. That's the one thing that's stopping. Other than that, I mean, what Brendan Rodgers has done is domestically remarkable. All those trophies he's brought, and there's more to come as well. So I think he views that as well. I think he's even been on record as saying, I didn't necessarily come back for Scottish football. Came back for Celtic, the size of the club, and also what we can possibly achieve in Europe. If we get a big win over Slovan Bratislava, or just any win, to be honest, imagine what the spirits are going to be like amongst the Celtic support. It's going to be ridiculous going into the rest of our campaign. Right, okay, just a few comments. Pete saying, didn't see enough of Engels on the ball to make a reasoned judgment, whereas McCowan looked right at home from the off. Simon Fedeni is most excited for McCowan out of the new signings. Interesting. Charlie talking about the disallowed goal on Sunday. I mentioned this yesterday. I think one of you did as well. It comes off maybe as a little bit petty after a 3-0 win, but I think it is important you still highlight things even when your team's won. I thought that was very tight, and I'm not sure I necessarily buy the angle they were using. I'm not saying there's some sort of massive cover-up or anything. The point I'm making is surely they should have a better angle being used for VAR, one that's in line rather than at an angle. Because when I looked at the still of that, the Kuhn one when McGregor plays it to him, I don't think you can say beyond any kind of reasonable doubt that he is offside. So for me, that's something that definitely needs looked at going forward.
It's always the good goals, isn't it, that get disallowed by VAR. I'm still reeling over Jota, and that was 2 seasons ago. That goal that he scored against Motherwell at Fir Park.
Similar because it was a similar angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also slanted as well. So would you not take into account the way the grass is as well, the way the two players are positioned? Either way, I don't think this will be, and I don't think we will see the thermal offside in Scottish football. It would just cost too much money, but you really do see the difference. Like, for example, in the Euros or in the Champions League, it's black and white. You can see if he's offside or onside because it's better technology. There's no excuse about having less cameras because Celtic Park has loads of cameras. Yes, I would understand that argument if you're in Fir Park or Dingwall, etc. But Celtic Park has got cameras all over watching this game from loads of different angles. So if it was the right decision, fine. That's absolutely fine. It's unfortunate because I think it was Celtic's best move of the game. It was lightning quick. It was akin to the sort of football that they were playing against Manchester City and Chelsea, that counter-attacking, where within 5-6 seconds they've made it from defence to attack, and Rangers looked absolutely all at sea. Robin Proper looked all at sea as well as the rest of the defence. So that was disappointing, but it didn't. The main thing for me is that it didn't deter Celtic at all because they scored a couple of minutes later and they made sure that goal was onside. I think they actually went about it in order for no VAR to be checked because it was just such a well worked goal from, firstly from Bernardo, and I think that pass has been forgotten in all of this. The chipped pass to Alistair Johnson. Great play from Johnson. That's him at his very best, getting to the byline and cutting back. Akin to Kieran Tierney, may I add as well. That's the sort of assist that he would have got 6-7 years ago. And then Maeda, who does scuff the ball quite a bit, but he didn't scuff it there, and it was a great finish from him. I just loved that goal. It's a shame about the disallowed goal because I thought it was one of Celtic's best worked goals of the season thus far, even though it was disallowed. But the one that came a couple of minutes later was just as good. So it shows you that they're consistent. It's not all just luck. There's a reason why they're playing this style of football because it's cutting teams open fairly regularly. And I do think they'll put 7 or 8 past a team one of these games this season. I think you'll see one of those Dundee-esque performances. Who knows? You might even get double figures if they're on target for the full 90 minutes. I'm very confident about this side. It's fighting talk, I get that, but it's international break. This will get forgot about when we don't.
I've got us down for an unbeaten season. Ryan's got us down for a 10-0. Tony, what's your mega prediction?
To be fair, sorry, just before Tony comes in, Rangers took 6 off of Ross County, and Celtic took 3 off of Rangers. So I'm just applying those maths together. They could do that to a team if they're up for it, but I think they like to conserve their energy as well.
I'll let the impetuosity of youth take centre stage on that.
Thank you very much.
And and I'll let the season progress a wee bit before giving you my wild take. But on that goal, the on-field decision was a goal because it happened that quickly. It was a breakneck speed goal, and it wasn't a clear and obvious error, was it? Which was what VAR was brought in for. And it's as marginal could be. There is no conclusive camera angle, so you can't guess that. It's millimetres, it's inches, it's whatever. So surely, without any conclusive proof, that's guesswork. The goal has to stand. And I think Celtic, within their right, should ask that question. Why do we not get the benefit? Because it's not a clear and obvious error. The on-field decision was a goal. It was breakneck speed. It was a beautiful goal, probably the goal of the season, because you'll find it hard to top that. It was bang, bang, bang in the net, and everybody was like, and then it was like, it was an afterthought. Was it offside? And nobody, you're talking about, ready reckoners and slide rules and all that kind of stuff. We're supposed to have the technology where it shows you a definitive. That wasn't a definitive. It just wasn't a definitive. So I'm not having that. And if I get a definitive that says it was offside, I'll accept that. That's fine. But how come when it comes to marginals, Celtic seem to be the ones that have been shafted? And we've spoken about many goals in terms of the marginals. Ryan highlighted the Jota one. There was even one in the 4-3 game at Tynecastle with Ange with Abada. They never showed you the lines. The first day that VAR was introduced, they got all the penalty decisions right, but they couldn't give you the definitive lines for Abada. So, these things irk supporters because it's the unjustness of them, it's the unfairness of them, and it's the fact that there's no consistency with these kind of decisions. And nobody can say to me that wasn't a guesswork, because there's no conclusive proof there that he was either onside or offside. And in no situation, if the on-field decision's a goal, then that should stand.
The difficulty I've got, and I really don't want to go on about this for too much longer, but the difficulty I've got when you look at it, nobody can look at that from the angle still they showed and say that's on or offside. Because you just can't, and that's the same angle that they'll be using in the VAR studio. Now, I know they've got some sort of system. I think I'm right in saying the lines are calibrated somehow, and that's how they know. But it really doesn't seem definitive to me. And the system I think has to be better going forward. Anyway, I think it's important to highlight these things when you're winning. Some people, as I say, will say that it's a bit I don't know, picky or whatever you want to say, but yeah.
This is the standard. We're 3 days on from a Glasgow derby and we're moaning about a goal that didn't impact the. But I get that, and if you do that when you're losing or if you draw the game, then it's sour
just because we're playing well doesn't mean that referees and officials should get off the hook if decisions are questionable. Anyway, just very briefly, Alexander, if you could pick any player from Martin O'Neill's team to be in this team, who would it be? What are you thinking? You'd probably be better at this than us, Tony. I'm trying to think. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? But it's maybe away from the obvious.
Okay,
in terms of a position where we maybe need a player, centre back. Big Mialby.
Obvious. Big Mialby was terrific. Big Bovo scared the living daylights out of opponents, but had an uncanny knack of getting it wrong on centre stage in Europe.
Bit of Lubo magic.
You would probably have loved Lubo a few years.
Box to box midfielder Petrov would thrive on this team.
Yeah.
I really did like Petrov growing up.
And and people will maybe dispute this, but Neil Lennon was an excellent player when he came to Celtic. For what he actually did, and Lambert as well. That team was just stacked full of class footballers. They really were. I see people putting in Alan Thompson as well. But that whole team as a collective unit were brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it's no surprise they got the results that they did in Europe. I remember a game against Lyon at home, and
Liam Miller
scored, and David Pleat was in the co-commentary box. I've said this before, and David Pleat said it's the best goal you will see in Europe for a long, long time. And he said, count the passes. There was a ridiculous amount of passes before Liam Miller.
Was that the header into the ground?
The header, into the ground, yeah.
From Larsson's cross.
And he was right. And David Pleat was just like, watch this goal. He says, this is just a brilliantly worked European goal from a team on form. And it was. I hadn't noticed it at the time, because you always just notice the kind of end product, don't you? But Celtic recycled the ball and worked the space absolutely brilliantly. And, that team were synonymous for that. Everybody playing their part. And, that was when Liam Miller was having his purple patch, God rest him. Sadly no longer with us. But the great game against Anderlecht as well. And then Man U came calling. And, it was a shame, because he was one that you thought could have gone on to be a brilliant Celtic servant and a great player. But he can't resist when Manchester United come. But, that team in particular, Martin O'Neill's era was the last kind of era of Celtic really claiming scalps at that level. And lots of teams came to Celtic Park and left with nothing. And they were a joy to watch. It was, and everybody played their part. It's very hard to pick one player from that era, because it was stacked full of them.
Yeah. There you go, Ryan.
Sorry, see if Rodgers can mix those two managers that came one after the other. If he can match Martin O'Neill's style and the scalps that he claimed with Gordon Strachan's pragmatism in Europe as well, because he was working with a shoestring budget, but look at the scalps that he got as well. AC Milan, Manchester United. These my earliest moments are sort of conscious moments watching Celtic really coming up against big teams. You had Rooney at Manchester, Ronaldo at that, Ryan Giggs, and then AC Milan had Kaká, etc. Dida in goals, of course, infamously. But just if you can mix those two together, and I think Brendan Rodgers could be a perfect hybrid of the two managers. Neil Lennon did take a couple of scalps as well in his first tenure at the club, even in his second in the Europa League. But if you can mix them all together, plus playing the style that Brendan Rodgers is clearly good at and clearly installing into the team this season, then who's to say they won't take a couple of scalps, even away from home? I want Celtic to cause a couple of frights this season in Bergamo and Dortmund, etc. These are chances for Celtic. You're only playing against these teams once, so why not hit them? Why not hit them with something like a surprise, like a surprise performance? One-off games, just go for it. It's these are the games in which they've really got to announce themselves on the European stage, and I think they could do it. They showed it in pre-season. I know it was only friendlies, but against Man City and Chelsea, if you can play like that in Europe, they've got a good chance of picking up points on their travels too.
Yeah, you just need to win that opening match. That's a big one for me, and you take it from there. 3 big matches after that. But I think someone made the point, I saw it somewhere, that if you win your opening match, and even if you go the next 3 and lose the next 3, which, listen, can happen, you're up against top teams, we'd still have a fighting chance going into the final 4 fixtures. So can't wait for it, guys. Sean's wondering about Greg Taylor's contract. This is just the topic that comes up every single week. I don't think there's any update on this at the moment. The latest, maybe a month ago, from Greg Taylor was there'd been no real chat about it. I reckon things might begin now, given that the window is over. I reckon Celtic were probably focused on the window. I think Greg Taylor will sign a new deal. I know some people doubt that. I'm pretty confident that Taylor will continue to be around. And just finally, we're all getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Jerry's booked the flights to Munich for the final. Let's hope he can get some tickets for the final. Good on you, Jerry. I don't think Celtic will be there, but you never know. That's the beauty of football. Okay, said this is going to be a shorter video because there's not a great deal to chat about, and we're on doing one of our longest videos for a while, so that just kind of sums up what happens when you get us 3 together talking about Celtic. Thank you everyone for tuning in, commenting, etc. We'll continue this going during the international break tomorrow.